Hey guys, Chris here, and I'm a Ukrainian Canadian. Today is July 4th, 2024, and let's get to the news happening in Ukraine, shall we? And before I begin, I just want to wish a happy 4th of July to my American viewers. Enjoy it. I hope the celebration is going to be awesome with your family and friends and other colleagues. And again, let's not forget that the United States is, and I hope will continue to be the defender of democracy, right? It's the arsenal of democracy. Let's hope that they continue with its path in defending countries that value democracy, such as Ukraine. Now, I want to cover a few updates. One of them is in Tambov. So the Ukrainians struck this city because there was a gunpowder factory. Well, there is a gunpowder factory located in Tambov. As you can see, it's kind of far away from Ukraine. It's about 450, 500 kilometers away from the border with Ukraine. And it's been confirmed by the Russians. There's actually a video that was spread around on social media of a single Ukrainian drone striking this gunpowder factory, and then an explosion occurred. Again, this is great news because it further confirms that the Russians are simply defenseless. They're not able to shoot down these small drones. But we also need to be realistic that the Russians still have a very large support from the Chinese government. The CCP is very interested in keeping Russia alive because they get dirt cheap resources, and also it's in their interest to have as much chaos ongoing because they have their own ambitions with the Pacific. So unfortunately, even if the Ukrainians were able to wipe out all of the Russian factories, military factories, they would still have a very large amount of support from China, and they would still be able to wage war in Ukraine. This is why the partners of Ukraine needs to ramp up production as well. The United States, Europe, and other countries like Canada, New Zealand, Australia, and other, like Japan, South Korea need to ramp up production to support Ukraine. Because as I've mentioned, this is not just a regional conflict. If Ukraine falls, God forbid, then this will send a message to other countries like China, Iran, North Korea, that they can attack and they can get away with it. And this will bring us closer and closer to World War III. We're already at the very first steps of World War III, and we can avoid that still if we can, allow Ukraine to really, become stronger. With that includes weaponry and financial assistance. So there's a lot of things to think. There's a lot of things to think through here, and of course, when we're speaking about Ukrainians striking Russian factories, that is part of this large strategy of overwhelming the Russians with, to the point where they're so weak that, even their dependence and reliance on China will not be enough for their collapse. So this is some food for thought here. Additionally, the Ukrainians confirmed that a large ammunition dump in the left bank has been cooking off since early this morning. So the Russians lost a huge ammunition dump somewhere in the left bank. There's actually a video that was also spread around in social media, and you can see Russians running away. Now, it's unconfirmed whether it was a Ukrainian strike or it was just pure Russian negligence. We know that they love their health and safety moments, so that is another great news. It's weakening the Russians and, obviously their ammunition and their counter battery abilities in the south of Ukraine, because that not only supports the left bank, but also the defense of Zaporizhia and the contact line between Ukraine and Russia. So this is some more good news. And also some explosions today in Sevastopol. Again, it's not really confirmed up to right now what happened, what was struck, but some strong explosions occurred in Sevastopol as well. So overall, some good strikes by Ukraine, or indirectly some Russian negligence, which brings us also some good positive news. Now, I need to talk a little bit about some more negative updates, and that is around between Bakhmut and Ocheretine, now north of Avdiivka. And unfortunately here, the Russians have made some further gains. This is one of the problematic areas for Ukraine. The Russians find little pockets where Ukraine is weak because there's no trenches built here. I believe the Ukrainians have started building trenches, but much further away, probably closer to Pokrovsk, Mirnograd, this road here. Essentially, this is where I think the Ukrainians have had time to start digging in, because they haven't done so when there was the Avdiivka offensive. I think it was too late, and they simply could not start building the first line of defense here, 20, 30 kilometers away. It's within artillery range for the Russians. So unfortunately, in this section, I've already talked about it multiple times. We will have to expect further Russian gains until the end of this summer. I really hope that more of that weaponry, more of these shells come through, and Ukraine will be able to also re-equip and also equip new brigades. Zelensky just talked about it today, that there's 14 Ukraine brigades that are, manned with soldiers, but they don't have the vehicles, the weaponry to complete these brigades into capable brigades that can actually conduct operations. So you can see that there's a drought still of critical weaponry for the Ukrainians. And so the Russians will find these opportunities, and you can see that one of the surprising opportunities that they found was around New York in Donetsk, not in New York State, thankfully, but also not thankfully because this has been a Ukrainian stronghold for several years. You can see that this is the 2014 line, and everything that is more, let's say, darker in shade is more red in shade is the Russian gains since 2022. So you can see that here in the last few days, the Russians have made some gains around the sector of New York and Toretsk. So unfortunately, they will be able to find these pockets of opportunities because they're also, wasting so many men and women at this stage to gain hundreds of meters per week. According to the Institute for the Study of War, they've mentioned that Russia is losing up to 30,000, and it's pretty much confirmed by the Ukrainian numbers of 1,000 plus casualties per day. So 30,000 Russian casualties per month at a minimum, but they're still able to replenish them at the same rate, so around 30 to 35,000 that they can mobilize or recruit per month as well in Russia. So this is problematic because Ukraine simply cannot match these numbers. Ukraine is 4 times smaller in population than Russia, and it needs to save lives, right? Human lives is what's most valuable for Ukraine right now, saving as many Ukrainian lives. And of course, there's been many people that left Ukraine since the war started, millions of them. So there is a population disadvantage for Ukraine. So they need to preserve lives as much as possible. Whereas Russia, as we've seen, simply does not care. They have a zombie attitude. They will continue crawling. As a matter of fact, I saw a video today. It's absurd at this stage, but Russian cripples, yes, that is cripples, pretty much walking without legs and limbs, storming Ukrainian positions. This is the attitude that the Russians have towards human life. Really just some food for thought for you guys. At this point, nobody would have ever thought 2.5 years ago that Russia would be doing this, and yet they are. And they haven't changed since, at the very least, World War II, where they sent millions of men to their deaths in World War II. And this is exactly what Putin intends to do and continue doing with the war in Ukraine. And it seems like the Russians are completely fine with that. So unfortunately, unless Ukraine can have more ammunition, more capabilities to destroy Russia's ability to wage war, they'll be able to have these small partial breakthroughs, right? It's not by giving a few F-16s and perhaps 100 Bradleys that Ukraine can change the tide, because Russia is continuously supported by China as well. And that's problematic when you have a Biden administration that is still doing this de-escalation policy where, it's always about this drip help to Ukraine, pretty much guaranteeing that Ukraine can defend itself but not win, right? And this has been frustrating, and this is going to be the default strategy that the Biden administration will continue doing, even if, and that's a huge if Biden is elected in November, which is a huge question mark following the disastrous debate that he had. And now people even asking him to step down as the candidate for the 2024 elections. And Trump being the president in 2025 is very, very realistic at this stage. And I know there's a lot of fear behind that, and I agree that his unpredictability is problematic, because really one day he says something that's pro-Ukrainian, and then the other, more often than not, he has more pro-Russian statements that he'll end this war very quickly, he'll talk with Putin, he'll make a quick deal, we'll stop funding NATO, right? There's a lot of concerning messages from Trump. But let's also be realistic in the sense that Trump isn't just the single one individual that makes decisions. With certain things that I actually did agree during his presidency, his strong stance on Iran, on China, there needs to be one, but there's one missing from that completation, and that is Russia. He needs to have a strong stance against Russia. If you stop Russia in Ukraine, you will stop China in Taiwan. You will stop Iran with their Ring of Fire approach in the Middle East, right? It all starts with Ukraine. You send a strong statement in Ukraine by defeating the Russians. This is how you get China off in the Pacific, and Iran and North Korea and other countries, right? Putin isn't a friend. And I hope that if, let's say, Trump is elected, I hope that his administration, his advisors will give him the right tools and advice to tell him, listen, you need to support Ukraine. This is a must. And after all, the bill, the financial military aid bill, was passed. How do you think it was passed? For all these months, it was just, put on pause. They blocked it as much as they could because Trump gave the green light. I really believe it. Trump talked with Johnson. He talked with other Republican party members, and he agreed that he needs to help Ukraine, right? Because this is critical. So I think that Trump was behind this approval of the $61 billion aid bill that was put on pause for such a long period of time. So I think that there is an ability for Trump to change his mind. But Zelensky, if that happens, needs to really have very open communication with Trump and bring him to Ukraine, show him what Russia has done in Ukraine, right? That can also convince him. I know that a lot of people are not fans of Trump, but unfortunately, this could be possible reality. And now it's a matter of like putting your eggs in different baskets, because Biden, I mean, who knows? He could lose the election this year, right? So Ukraine needs to take this approach of open communication with Trump, and really tell Trump that you want to beat China. You want to make sure that China doesn't attack Taiwan or the Philippines or other Pacific countries. You help us. You help us in Ukraine. Because Putin and Xi Jinping are very good friends, right? And their interests are more aligned. So I think that is the critical approach that Ukraine needs to take here. And before I end this video as well, so this is the unfortunate update with regards to the map. Chasiv Yar and the Ocheretine Avdiivka area are very problematic right now for Ukraine. And as I've mentioned, the only way that Ukraine can stabilize it is if we come out of this de-escalation approach, which is what the Biden administration is currently doing, that let's just give them enough, right? And really say we are committed to Ukraine's victory. Thus, we are sending hundreds of Abrams tanks. We're sending dozens of, instructors and pilots that can help the Ukrainians fly more F-16s. We're sending even more HIMARS missiles. We're telling the Ukrainians, you can strike Russia with the ATACMS no matter, there's no limitation. You can strike in Rostov-on-Don, in Moscow if you want to, as long as they're military targets, right? No limitations on Ukraine. Because really, is it really, as I've mentioned many times in the past, is it really a commitment in Ukraine's victory when you're limiting Ukraine's success through all of these strings attached, right? It's kind of a BS statement that we will help Ukraine no matter what, and no matter what happens, when you're telling Ukraine, well, actually, anything that is further than Kursk or Belgorod, you can't strike them, okay? Only 100 kilometers max. And when we know that most of the Russian airfields are located, 200, 300 kilometers away, whereas Ukraine has those capabilities, but they're just being told by the current American administration that you can't do that, right? So these limitations need to be wiped out. It's 2.5 years of war. We need to be decisive at this stage. And same with Europe as well. You need to stop pretending that this is just a regional conflict and start producing more weapons, opening up these factories. And it's a small wake up right now. I'm sensing it in France, in Germany, in the UK, but it's very slow, right? Not as fast compared to this axis of evil, which has started ramping up weapons even before they started the war in Ukraine or even in the Middle East, right? They're ready. We need to be ready as well. So that's the video for today, guys. I hope you enjoy my update. I've talked a lot. There's a lot of updates, but I hope that you enjoy my content. Happy 4th of July again to my American viewers. With all due respect, we still love the United States. I still love the United States. Yeah, huge thank you for your support. Leave me comments if you have any opinions or anything that you want to share. And subscribe to my channel if you enjoy my content. Huge thank you, and Slava Ukraini!